afternoon. I think it's afternoon already. Sorry. I will make it very quick. Go through the Lua textile, which is really a small part of Southeast Asia, but it's important to, I think, the mainland Southeast Asia, especially when you talk about the ethnicity of that vast, foothill on the Himalayas to the east and to the south. There's so many things that to be mentioned, and quite often it was not mentioned at all. For example, the influence of the earlier ethnic groups living in that area. Nowadays, like Thailand is really proud of being Thai, but they still have no idea where they come from. It's amazing. And we go to Thailand and ask them, "Are you real Thai?" He said, "Yes." But my father was Chinese, and my mother was New Zealander, something like that. So very difficult to find where they come from. And what's the typical look of Thai people? Look at me. People ask, even getting on the airplane yesterday, people didn't speak Thai to me. They spoke, you were somewhere from somewhere. They don't even know where I come from. Very difficult. So when I came back from my study in Los Angeles in 1960, I graduated in '68. I came back to Thailand and then had to deal with my grandparents up in northern Thailand and taking care of them until they passed away. So I had to end up doing something, and it was, at that time, it was hardly any foreigners up that way. And the only foreign place there was the UC's office, that they have some magazine or Thai magazine you need to read in English. Otherwise, there's no other places. And Chiang Mai was the last place to have ice cream. Just imagine Chiang Mai nowadays bustling with ice cream parlors and coffee shop. But at that time, there was no ice cream beyond that. And I ended up became a teacher, studying art curriculum at the college, and then eventually by 1970 something, I ended up at Chiang Mai University. There was no art department there. There was no art courses there. Only communication arts. So I ended up in the communication department teaching stage design, magazine layout, and all this. Very complicated, but anyway, no art. And so by 75, 76, I thought that I told the university that there should be an art department here, not in Thailand. And here we are sitting on top of so many things, and people came to Chiang Mai to see temples, paintings, and cultures. All these were art, and no knowledge about it. And people claim, this painting came from, must be Indian or Chinese, or both. That's the only thing that they know. It could be Chinese or Indian. But what about other people? Other people are just hill tribes. They no culture there. And then I said, okay. Then I said, maybe I should start something about the people in northern Thailand. For example, Chiang Mai itself. At that time, people of Chiang Mai themselves, they were not told or educated that Chiang Mai was not really part of Siam, because people said, Chiang Mai must be, the good representation of Siam. But then look at the costume, look at the culture, even the fingernail dance, and that's not Thai. Where's it from? We don't know. They said maybe they come from heaven. So that was the conclusion. And so I started off the art curriculum, which eventually evolved into an art department, and then my area that I took with more responsibility then was the traditional art and culture of Chiang Mai itself. And it's amazing that nobody knew anything then. And many people said, we just came from South China, and then pick up Indian culture and became good Buddhist and the beautiful pagodas. And I said, "Are you sure?" So I put question mark on that, and I started investigating and took my students around, and gradually come to a point that a lot of things, like Kun John Ang also talking in Malay costume, same thing happened in Thailand, and even worse in northern Thailand, which is called Lana. It used to be a kingdom by itself, with all many influences from all directions because it was situated just in the middle of this super highway between China and India, Champa Kingdom and Burma and all this. So it's just in the middle of that. So they get all kinds of influences coming through. People kind of accepted that. But then they forgot to look who were there before us. And I'm still going, I couldn't do everything one time because of being an art teacher, so I tried to teach everything. But one of it is to find out about the textiles. At that time, there were no art department and anywhere in Thailand to be talking about Thai, real, TAI, textile as such. People talk about mostly the cord textile, which were imported or influenced from India or China. Even the way they put together, like John Yang just said, they were influenced by the jacket with the Persian gowns and all that. But nobody talked about how were the early people of I would say, mainland Southeast Asia were of ethnically and culturally also. So here we go to we're going to talk about the Luo costume. Luo is one of the, I would say, the earliest tribe that exists in mainland Southeast Asia before the arrival of the Thai-speaking, the arrival of the Burmese, the arrival of the hill tribes, which we have many today. And even like the Thai Lu people who still up in China. What I'm wearing now is a Thai Lu costume from South China. You can find many in Thailand. So we talk about the Luo costume, but before getting to that, I want to take about there's so many ethnic groups, early ethnic groups of Southeast Asia. I think that because they're all probably, for me now, of Austro-Asian groups. People said they were Chinese, Tibetans, Indians, Persian, or even like other area coming from the west, from the east. But they were people who were there before us. And Austro-Asian, there's so many of them. The one that's still going strong, which is outside of Thailand, is in western Burma now, joining or some part in Assam of India. For example, this is one example, is the Nagaland people. Very interesting culture. I think some of you probably have been to that. I've been to the New Year festival a couple of times, and it still seem to be the original people of Southeast Asia. With still not much influence from outside. So wearing a loincloth, sometimes no loincloth, just walking around half naked or naked. We found Nagaland is quite interesting, very interesting. And of course, besides the textiles, which they're very weak, very minimal, they also have things that they, found around, for example, the boar's teeth and all that, but are very precious and mostly from the sea. Seashells. You see that? That's not earphone, seashells. If you see that. And of course, the cowrie shell is very valuable. It's part of the costume, and even later became the currency among the people in that mainland Southeast Asia. The music, the dance, were typical, very earlier tribes, which Thais and Burmese deny. This is for us. It's too barbaric, too noisy, and all that. So this is one of the group, for example. Okay, now we go to present day northern Thailand. There were groups like this, and in the last 40 years, some of them still found along the border between northern Thailand and Laos. They belong to the Thais call them Pi Dong Liang, the ghosts or spirits of the yellow leaves, because they don't know how to do farming, and they never live inside a shelter as such. They build a little simple, not even thatch, but banana leaf. Banana leaf, they cut it and put as a roof over their head. And if the banana leaves turn yellow, then they will move on. And move on. I don't think they have any religion. They don't believe in spirits. They don't know about spirits. And most of them were really, really naked. And the Thais call them Pi, which is the spirits or the ghosts, because they don't dare to meet people. They're exchanging by putting things somewhere near a farmer's house and all that, and then the farmer would bring things and give it to them, but we never see each other. That's why we call them Pi or spirit. And since they don't live anywhere long enough to meet anybody, so they just until the banana leaves turn yellow and then run away. And there's no, one group will not exist more than 20 or 30 people, and they wander about. They were wanderers, and they call Pi Dong Liang. I think ethically they are the original, I would say, the Austro-Asiatic group of Thailand, the most original. They barely developed into just like a small group, not even a village, and not even farming. And they eat things from like insects and roots, or even like small frogs from the stream, and that's it. I remember one time in the late 70s when there were a lot of, I would say, like war-torn people from Laos running across, and this group also came along with them. And the Thai government put them in garrison for people ran away from the other side of the river Mainland in the river Khom area. And these people were placed inside a shelter and given rice to eat, and 80% of them died from eating rice because their stomach were not used to eating rice, or their body is not used to sleeping inside a shelter. So once a week they asked if they could go out and dig some roots to eat and sleep out in the open instead of under the shade, or even the tin roof is the worst for them. They all die from that. So this car or this tribe would be also interesting, and we still found quite a bit. There's a lot of photographs, but nowadays they have changed a bit. Migrated to not to towns, but to area where the other tribes, your tribe, for example, the Hmong tribe, they would be planting the corn and all that, and they used the labor of this group. And there was one missionary who went and organized them and converted them to Christianity. I don't know how he did that. It's very difficult also. But anyway, let's see. We have, this is the picture of the car. And there are many names of this tribe, besides we call them Pi Dong Liang. The other Thai ethnic, the Shan people, call them Kawa. And the Thais in South China call them Khanwa. So the name that is interesting also, if you're going to go to Thailand, many names of that appear in the names of the towns. For example, in northern Thailand it's called Lamphun, Actually, it's corrupt sound from Luat Pung. Luat Pung is these people throw the spears. And then even Lampang, the original name of Lampang was Lakon or Luat Kon. They believe that this tribe carrying some food to offer to the Buddha when Buddha arrived in Southeast Asia, according to the legend. And even the major town in central Thailand called Lopburi actually comes from the word Lawa Pura, refer to this group also. So definitely they were the original people. What kind of clothes they wear? Hardly. They don't know how to weave. They only know how to make little, thread of fibers, make basket. That's it. So their cloth came from whoever lived around them, or civilized people lived around them, nearby them. And the Thai groups, all Thais, Shan, or Sipsampana Thai, call them Wa or Lua, Lawa, and later become the Lua people. See what they wear? This is what they wear. Sometimes they don't wear anything. Loincloth, which is an old piece of cloth given to them or exchanged with some food or something from them. That's it. It's for the men. And the women was not much different. And I found a book also talking about the British people who then conquered upper part of Burma and report that in Shan State there were these groups that very barbaric, male or female, no clothes. And they were headhunters. They didn't eat people, but they cut people's hair. Yeah. And then what they do with it, they didn't want any jewelry or guns or anything. They just want the hair. They said this tribe people love to put the heads on the sticks and put in front of their house. They said the spirits or the thing of this head could protect their home better than dogs. Yeah. And even the foreigners' head is even better because the foreigners would not know the road or the way around there and around the house, you see. So this is a stranger, they better heads. So it's very valuable for them. If it's Hmong tribe or Hill tribe heads, not so expensive, maybe two rupees for one head. But if it's a Westerner's head, maybe 100 rupees. Photograph from 1950s. Still, that of them in Mainland province, eastern part of northern Thailand. This is their shelter with the leaves above their head, and when the leaves turn yellow, they will just move on. About the same period, but more civilized, more organized. These are the Ka people. Ka Lua, Ka Wa, Ka Lao. The word Lao comes in. See what they dress? Loincloth. But then, earrings is more important than the loincloth for the men. And then, kind of a piece of wrap for the women. They have belongings like baskets to carry things in their back. So it's considered more developed than that, which is more probably closer to the Naga just we saw just now. Then came these Kawa, which we have many in northern Thailand. The people tell that, they're just dirty, we don't deal with them, they're not Thai people. But interestingly, see what they wear. It's a short, narrow wraps, or skirt, or pasin, which is sewn together, and they have the blouse, they have beads and all that. This is of course a later period. Beads came with Westerners, of course. The British, the Indians, Persian came to the east. selling beads or give beads to in exchange for things. And then later, silver, which became the jewelry, because the Indian brought the silver coins as rupees to be used in their colony of India and Burma. So those were melted down to become jewelry. But look at the skirt. The skirt has the horizontal stripes. This is interesting because that's why a lot of the Thai women's textile, especially towards the northern area or Laos or Shan states or even South China, have these horizontal stripes. Did it come from the Luo people? It looks like it. Beads. Yeah. And the silver, it looks like cell phone in there. Yeah. But you can hear better with that kind of form, design, the silver earring. But look at the men. What are they wearing? White. Before they were loincloth or no loincloth, but then white. White pants and white jacket. This is a very ceremonial costume for the men. But for the ladies, always. Like the blouse, the skirts, and of course the beads. They're relatively dark skin. Look at that. Dark brown. That was the headman. He's still alive. He was wearing that white costume on that day because he was elected as the headman of his village. And interestingly, white became important for ceremonial costume. What happened if it get dirty? You have to wait for the next occasion. Quite often it's very, very dirty because these tribes don't know how to bathe that well. And a lot of them tend to live on the higher ground, away from the Siam people or the Siamese people. Because if the kids cry or getting naughty or something, the father would tell him, the Siam, which is Siam, will come and eat you. So I know who was eating who at that time. I photographed this picture some 40 years ago. First time I went to the Luo village. I got, well, it's a good picture. Because the one on the left, both parents were Luo. The boy next one with a little, decoration around his neck and a baht coin, with a rubber band wrapping around his t-shirts. That one, his mother was from the other tribe, which is Karen. Karen is another tribe from we call them Tibetan Burmese background. The girl, the tall girl there with the pins and rubber bands there, her mother is also from other tribe, from the Lahu tribe. And then the one in the white shirt, the father was Luo, the mother was Thai. So how the color of the skin changed with a different mix. But look at the skirts. Horizontal stripes. It's typical of the Luo. They said they've been wearing it for a long, long time, since they began to wear something. The face, of course, you can still see it in the sculptures in Thailand or in Cambodia. See the thick lips, the wide nose, and the eyebrows that always connects like that is typical of the look of the Luo people. Buddhist temples, early Buddhist temple of the Mahayana Buddhism coming from South China, southwestern China, still where the faces of the Buddha. The Buddha came from India, but he looked like a Luo in Thailand. Still distant villages hard to get to. Actually, I took Kelsey to one last month. Yeah, pretty rough also. But I'm still living in the single pitch roof. Of course, now I changed to tin roof. Before it used to be thatching. With the color of the skin, even the hairstyle that they had, that kind of hair, just like one sister do it all, And they still prefer not to wear clothes, if possible. But because the school teachers and the missionaries try to say, please wear something. I went up to Shan State. There's still lower houses, but not just one house or one family. This one has 70 or so people in it, and they're all from different families in a long house. This is a small one. The big one has 180 people in it, about 10 to 20 families. Long houses. And of course, always thatch. Very thick thatching because live in a cooler climate. And you can see the lady there where she sits because of the narrow skirt. They sit with the legs straight like that. It's supposed to be very proper. One time I invited them to come down to the festival at the university. They all prepare things and everything to do the dance and everything. And then the ladies are sitting and they were interviewed by I think it was BBC. And they all sit properly with their feet pointing to the guests. And then for the Thais, it's very, very unacceptable. But for them, this is the most respectful, is putting the feet to your guests. And I saw it again in that village, in that longhouse. They were Buddhists. So when they attend the temple, listening to the preaching, the monks preaching, with their feet towards the monk. Quite interesting. Because of the narrow skirts, so they could not fold their legs very well. So it's considered proper. But I saw it again. This is not the Lord people. I was in Sri Lanka. Many of Sri Lankan women also point their feet towards the Buddha. They could have come from there, but I'm not so sure. But I'm very sure that because the skirt is so narrow, they could not fold their feet. The house is like that, with the horn on top, due to the tradition that when they build a new house, they have to do the sacrifice of buffalo, and then put the buffalo head on the roof. I think that's also a tradition of in Malaysia also. Some carving over the entranceway, wood carving, very beautiful, very different from the artwork or the textiles. But maybe I think connected to the carving of the stone architecture of Cambodia. They could be related. You don't know. The houses always has one roof coming down with a patio. Never live on the ground. Elevated up. And of course, the porch there is for hanging or drying clothes. That's why I get to see a lot of textile. There's no religion. Okay. Very quick. Animism, a bit. Totem pole, yes. Sacrifice the buffalo on the occasion of the headman appointments. Totem pole, yes, in many villages, and most of the sacrifice be water buffalo. They live, this is the growing rice, but not in terrace fields, in the slopes. Here are the skirts. See that? My secretary is wearing it. You can see that later. Typical of the Lord lady textile. And see that? The stripe. Because of the what do you call call the narrow fabric that they weave by hand. So the red color is one side of the fabric, and when they put them together, so they have the two red stripe, big stripe on top and below. And the little ones are in between. What's really important is the warp ikat, dye of indigo, and the red is dyed by the what's the name of this thing called the sisal in the sapan wood dye. Typical now, many of them became Buddhist, and many of them became Christian. That's the headman we went to stay with 2 weeks ago. He dressed up for us. Typical of the men would be wearing white, ceremonial costume, but then the red banner on the head, and then very important to have a silver dagger at his waist. Typical of the house, fireplace inside, and ladies still wearing white. And then, of course, there's one interesting thing that this textile here is for ceremonial. For example, for the funeral service, they don't wear this thing, they make it. But it's the beginning or the earlier, the primitive form of the brocade weaving. Very, very crude and very rough. Yeah, this is typical of their weaving. They sit down and with a strap loom. See the many names I don't remember, all the designs of the horizontal indigo dye, tie dye before weaving. And they put together to become like this. This is how they dye it. So they basically 3 colors there: red, white, and blue. The color of the national flags of Thailand. Came from the lower skirts. See how they sit? Oop. Gone. Finished. So it's just to give you the conclusion that maybe there's a lot of things in Thailand that still not discovered, especially in textile tradition, which indicates many things of our present-day culture and even the way we wear our typical pasin or the sarong. Time for questions? Is it too late now? Okay, thank you.